It starts with customer focus. We solve real problems. We're a lean company. What that means is we don't do if you build it, they will come. Every problem that we solve, every feature in our product is because a customer needed it, right? So it's relentless customer focus. It's also about solving problems more efficiently, faster, better than others. So in that case, it's a combination, two of our sort of core pillars. Our curiosity, that is learning and pushing the envelope, but also I'd say courage and bravery, right? We're not afraid to break new ground. We're not afraid to say, well, I understand somebody else is sort of doing something there already, but if we have an idea about how to do it better, and it makes sense, it makes business sense, we're not afraid to go and challenge the assumptions in the industry.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today, we're going to talk about customer success. What you really want as a leader is to have teams focused on customer success. Now, I'm not trying to be prescriptive, but it just seems like this comes up quite often is we want to build a business around solving real problems. And we know that that will allow us to create a long-lasting company. And we want to continue to evolve. And you've got to have someone besides yourself focused on solving those problems. You need teams focused on customer success. So today, our special guest is the CEO of Aqfer. They're a platform for data for marketing specifically. And I will let Daniel explain a little bit more about it in the interview. But what we have for you is the conversation around customer success, about how they align their values and their work and their objectives and key results to customer success and why that's so important for a fast growth company. Now, we also unpack about what happens when you're going from version 1.0 kind of company to a 2.0. Now, you may not know exactly what that means in here, but what it really means is you have to evolve beyond what made you successful to create the kind of team that can scale in this 2.0 version that is not based on you doing the direct work or your leaders doing the direct work. They were empowering the team around them. So stay tuned for how that all wraps up into teams focused on customer success. Our job here is to help you grow your company and help you be the best leader you can be, the one your team deserves. Now, I have said this over and over and over on this podcast, but I want to make sure it's very clear to you that if you want to make these shifts, that sometimes you have to address the blind spots that are getting in the way. And you may not know what the blind spots are because they're blind to you. They're not, available to you. You're emotionally attached to the processes and the way things have always been done and the way the market moves. And I can give you example after example after example of clients that have moved to 10 million and beyond 10 million, just clients I've worked with, because they were able to understand what the blind spots were and they were able to address the gaps in their own leadership. Now, if this is curious to you about how, what you have to face and what you have to do, then you can actually schedule a call with me where we'll unpack the leadership gaps and do an assessment. We formalized this and codified it in a way so that you can actually get scores and you can really dive into the nuance of the gap between leadership effectiveness of your executive team and the leadership effectiveness of your managers, if you will. And so all of this is something I feel like is very necessary for you to grow your business. And for right now, it's absolutely free. I say for now, because it may not be. Someday you may listen to this and it's not available, but if for right now, go to genehammett.com, schedule your call today, and we'll do that leadership gap assessment. Now, here's the interview with Daniel. Hi, Daniel. How are you?
I'm great. How are you today?
Fantastic. We're going to have a great interview. We're going to talk about kind of what drives your business to that next level. I know you guys made the Inc. list recently, and I want to let you explain to us what the business is. So tell us about Aqfer.
Well, we are a marketing data platform as a service. We're the first and only in the category. And what we do is we take all of these sort of canonical marketing data problems that 5,000 MarTech and ad tech vendors have to solve, and we provide it as a platform as a service. So the benefit to our customers is they can focus their valuable and scarce talent on their unique selling proposition. They can focus on their user experience, their workflow, their proprietary data, their machine learning algorithms, their distribution strategy, all the things that make them special. But what they don't have to do is spend 70% of their capital building table stakes for how do you manage the big data through digital channels and turn that into something useful. We provide that as a service, so it's somewhat of a channel play. So our customers are SaaS vendors, are B2B SaaS vendors themselves.
Fantastic. You mentioned the first and only, and sometimes that's really fantastic. And sometimes it's hard to educate an audience about your products. What do you know about the first and only? How does it really impact your business?
Well, being a category creator versus, a leader in an established category is always a challenge. There's evangelism. You have to educate the market. You have to deal with what I call the first of the two speed bumps on the path to purchase, which is who are you and what do you do, right? You have to explain, what it means that, oh, by the way, you don't have to build it all yourself. And it's not buy versus build, but it's actually buy to build. Or instead of do it yourself, it's do it together.
Well, I'm glad you explained that to me. I know that we could probably talk all day long about marketing data and where things are going, but we really come here on this podcast to talk about leadership and culture and the core principles that drive your business. If I ask you to step back from the business and say, what are the core principles that guide you and allow you guys to grow at this pace, what would you say?
Well, it starts with customer focus. We solve real problems. We're a lean company. What that means is we don't do if you build it, they will come. Every problem that we solve, every feature in our product is because a customer needed it, right? So it's relentless customer focus. It's also about solving problems more efficiently, faster, better than others. So in that case, it's a combination, two of our sort of core pillars. Our curiosity, that is learning and pushing the envelope, but also I'd say courage and bravery, right? We're not afraid to break new ground. We're not afraid to say, well, I understand somebody else is sort of doing something there already, but if we have an idea about how to do it better, and it makes sense, it makes business sense, we're not afraid to go and challenge the assumptions in the industry.
Now, you're pulling some of this stuff from your core values. Why is it important for you to have core values that your company is aligned to?
Well, we're now up to 70 people. We've grown 3x in terms of our team size in the last 15 months. The only way you can grow and keep sort of the level of performance and excellence and delivery is having everybody understand, what people talk a lot about culture, corporate culture, right? But it's so important that everybody understands the common set of values, because otherwise, when you bring on new team members, you expand the team, things start to, I wouldn't say go off the rails, but you lose sort of that culture, that focused culture and identity. Right. So it's really people understand these are our core values, principles, and it's about the customer comes first, whatever it takes. That's sort of a mantra we have. This, and we have this happen all the time. It's one of the characteristics of our field is somebody will come in and they say, yeah, we think we're going to see about 10 billion of something a month. And then you find out it's $1 trillion a month, but their budget isn't any bigger. Right. So you can go back to them and say, all right, well, it may cost you a little bit more because it's 100 times bigger than you said, but we've always taken that as a challenge of saying, what could we do to make this faster, better, more efficient? And so over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, we've actually sort of broken a lot of the traditional approaches towards dealing with these problems apart and rebuilt them and achieved capabilities that are 10 to 100 times faster than everybody else. And so again, without a relentless focus on customers, their needs, their business realities, as well as the curiosity to explore and figure out how to break down the barriers and the courage to be able to go and take action on that and move on that. It's not just lip service. It's an essential part of how you get to go from point A to point B when you're a company like ours.
Now, Daniel's been talking about values. Now, he's mentioned them: the client focus, the integrity, the curiosity, and the courage. And those are the four main values that they have, or four total values. I want to make sure that it's clear to you. Look, he knows them so well, but I know that his team members also know these things. They're talking about them constantly, about having the courage to move forward, having integrity, having, curiosity. And those things wrap up into this client focused on success. Now, I don't know what it looks like inside your organization, but only you can answer the question. Are you guys using values to the fullest extent? Are you living them day in and day out? Are they part of the day-to-day conversations? Are they part of how we make decisions? Are we really doing the best job we can hiring? All of those things and many, many more are the reasons why values are such an important piece to company growth, to leadership, and to culture. That's my take on it, just adding to what Daniel's already said. Back to our interview with Daniel. So I get the concept of core values for sure. I've talked about them a lot. We've actually got a book coming out that addresses how do you live your core values. But I want to ask you, like, if you've got people that you're hiring, I know you guys are up to about 70 employees, and you probably have even more people that you work with beyond that. How do you get them to really adopt and commit to this customer focus that you've been talking about?
Well, there's a couple of ways we do that. First of all, we have frequent meetings across the company, opportunities to exchange. We share information horizontally, up and down as well across the company, everything from financial results, very transparent, to what's happening with customers. We have a couple of mantras that we live, and we often say everybody in the company is in sales because we're a SaaS B2B company and ARR is king. But we also say everybody in the company is in client success, right? That means that it doesn't matter if you're on a product team. We've got a customer, let's rip open the product and see what are the things that could be done differently to address this type of need, right? So it's, again, we're not afraid to throw engineers in front of customers and talk about, understand their problem better. So again, it's partly that. The other side is around training and education. We're constantly sharing information, white papers. We're constantly teaching each other. And again, we sort of don't typically look too much at somebody's role to say, oh, they don't really need to know this. You'll never hear somebody say that, oh, they don't need to know this. As far as we're concerned, the more everybody in the company knows about the business strategies, the execution, the way in which people are using our technology to solve brands, marketing, and advertising problems, or the way in which our technology innovation allows new business architectures and solve sort of essential problems that are almost existential problems facing some of our customers. As far as we're concerned, if everybody understood all of that, that's better. So again, it's about horizontal and vertical information exchange and constant learning.
You mentioned the word transparency, and I'd love for you just to connect the dots for us, because you've mentioned financial transparency, business strategy, and what do you think has been the most impactful element of transparency that has allowed your team to stay aligned and for you guys to grow the way you have?
Well, I will say that one of the transitions you go through as you grow is you start to have to introduce some more processes in organization. And we often talk about process with a lowercase p versus a capital P, right? You don't want to have process for process sake. But one of those is communicating what our goals and our objectives. We implemented OKRs late last year and rolled that out in Q1. We're continuing to expand on that. And that's a great mechanism for ensuring that everybody understands what every department's and team's objectives and how we're going to measure success. But even before that, we always had objectives throughout the company that we were sharing on an informal basis. So transparency is about what are the problems we're facing, what are the goals that people are trying to solve. And when we talk about transparency, you can talk about transparency across the company so everybody's informed, but there's also transparency in terms of information for success. So one of my board members taught me years ago when he was a CEO and I was a CTO, taught me this interesting lesson about pressure and stress. So pressure is good, stress is bad. Pressure becomes stress when there is uncertainty or lack of control. So I'm going to tie this. So if you are uncertain about what's expected of you, if you don't know what success means, if there isn't transparency about what you're trying to accomplish and how you're doing, that's going to turn pressure into stress. Also, if you don't have control over your success, if you're being asked to do things that you're not trained on or outside your authority or you haven't given the resources for, that's the other side of it. And the job of a leader, the job of a manager is to make sure for their team that pressure doesn't become stress. And that's actually, my number one tenet in terms of my management and leadership philosophy is that if all you do is make sure that your team is under pressure to grow, to have their reach exceed their grasp, that's great. You need that. Otherwise, you don't grow, you don't develop. But it's our job to make sure that never turns into stress because of that transparency and because of giving people control over their destiny.
I wanted to jump in here about transparency. Daniel's been talking about pressure and stress. Pressure is good. Pressure, like accountability. A lot of companies resist putting pressure on people, but I actually think pressure is very good. You don't lose weight really effectively unless you have some kind of pressure, either from your doctor or from an event that's on the horizon or something else that really provides the pressure. Now, if you're under stress, it doesn't work so well. But what he's been talking about is the transparency of, the challenges that an organization has and how we rally to be there. And I think a lot of organizations miss that challenge. They want to avoid the pressure of putting on people. I know I've worked a lot with sales teams within the coaching and what we do for our clients. And one of the easiest thing we do is we dial up the pressure a little bit. We really are intentional about this. Not so much that it stresses people out, but it truly does put the accountability and pressure in a way that's really challenging for them, but supportive at the same time. All that being said, I really appreciate you listening in here to the podcast. Now back to our interview with Daniel. We've been talking about, how to get your team focused on customer success, Daniel, and I want to tune into your leadership principles. You have mantras for the business, you have core values for the entire culture. What are the leadership principles that drive you?
Well, number one is you have to walk the walk, right? So we don't generally hire leaders who are good managers only. They have to have domain knowledge. They have to have expertise. Ideally, they've done the job of all the people who work for them. Obviously, there's a point at that where that's no longer possible. But certainly up until the I wouldn't say mid-management level, but certainly sort of at the VP level and below, you need to have strong competence in your functional area. We're not a believer in generic, managers who you drop in and they know how to manage, so they're going to do great at this. You have to have the competency to be able to roll up your sleeve and get in the trenches with people. The key is you go from that transition from sort of a 1.0 company to a 2.0 company is getting to the point where those leaders can get out of the trenches, and how do you empower the team to manage things and deal with issues on a day-to-day basis without having to have the leadership's involvement. So that's really, again, the principles of the leader sort of change as you go through that evolution from that 1.0 to the 2.0 stage.
I see this happen quite a bit, and I also see companies that get stuck. They can't make the transition to empowering everyone. They can empower a few people and certain teams are doing it well, but it's not something that's throughout the organization. I know you guys are probably in the midst of that, going from 1.0 to 2.0. What can you tell us about how do you truly make that transition and get a good foundation for it?
Well, a key part of that is defining what good looks like. That's sort of a starting point, right? So that for every function, department, role, people having a good understanding of here's an example of someone doing this successfully, so that people have an idea of what, and of course there are many different ways to achieve that success, but you have to give people an idea of what good looks like, both from a standpoint of the customer engagement, which you're constantly measuring, as well as job performance. Once you have that, then now you can start to focus your leaders to think a bit more about, and this is another key change from 1.0 to 2.0, thinking about where does the business need to be in 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, as opposed to, okay, how do I solve this problem right now better than anyone else? That, it's overplayed talking about going from tactical to strategic, but it is a point that you're in. And it's not necessarily about knowing what the future is going to be and saying, I'm going to put a plan in for 12 months from now, we're not going to deviate. It's about saying, what are the characteristics going to be of my group, of my team, for us to get to the next level? And then what are the things I have to put in place to get to that level? So again, you don't have the time and energy to spend on that if you're making the sausage with the team, which is what you have to do in the 1.0. If you are a fast-moving, agile, lean startup, if your team as a 1.0 company isn't, rolled up their sleeves and their hands in the middle of the pizza dough with your team and leading from the front, as you say, you have to be leading from the front at that stage. In 2.0, you can't lead from the front anymore because you'll never scale.
It's a really good analogy with the sausage and the pizza. But I think you brought it home when you're talking about leading from the front and how that works when you have the domain expertise. Whereas in 2.0, you're empowering others to lead and you're doing, it seems like you're not working as hard because you're doing visionary work and strategic work and you're developing people and coaching people, but it's just as powerful and even more needed as you make that transition. Would you agree?
Yes, there's actually a joke I was told years ago from a CEO said, if I delegate everything, I might have time to do my job. In the 1.0, you're not delegating everything. You're in there and you're looking for, there's a crack, I'm going to throw my body into the crack and fill it, right? Yeah. That's how you are in the 1.0. So in the 2.0, you are just as busy, but now to be able to get the things done to set yourself up for success in the next stage, you have to be able to not just delegate. By delegate, that means you have to trust, right? Delegation is not telling someone else you need to do this. Delegation is knowing that you have a team that is equipped to be able to take on, identify what has to be done and take it on, and they understand what's expected of them.
Well, that's a good place to wrap up today's conversation. Daniel, I really appreciate it. Love your insights and your wisdom.
It's great talking to you, and I love chatting with folks who have been through these battles like I have.
Wow, what a great interview. I love talking to experienced in the trenches leaders like Daniel, and what he unpacked for us today is very helpful. This, having teams focused on customer success is not only important, but it's also one of the key measures that we have in our own company. When we do workshops or when we do coaching, we're looking for measurable success that we can help the client see and the stories that really go with that. And that is where clients just are working with us after project after project after project. So if that's of interest to you, if you're curious about executive coaching or leadership development for your managers, then make sure you reach out to me. Check us out at genehammett.com. When you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, think of courage. We'll see you next time.